Welcome everybody to our long table discussion about our Zero Waste Initiative. We're calling it the Festival Footprint Initiative. And the Festival Footprint Initiative is basically our march toward becoming a zero waste event over the next 3 to 5 years. Last year we introduced compostable beer cups into our stream, and this year we've sort of taken it to the next level with our signage. And earlier this season, we were talking with Toyota, who's one of our sponsors, and we're very, very happy to have them here tonight at the table. Thank you very much. And we started discussing what we could do to sort of expand this zero waste initiative. And the idea came about that we would end up having some partners over the next couple of years that are part of this initiative. And so the Huron River Watershed Council and the Ecology Center have come on board with us to have some programming this year. There was an event last week with the Ecology Center. This week, the jugglers that you see all around are coming from the Huron River Watershed Council. They have core balls over here tonight for a very, very discounted purchase price of $10. They're usually about $30, I think, and so get them while they're hot. That's a little plug for tonight. But what we're here tonight to do is have what is called a long table discussion. It's a little bit of a different sort of variation on a panel discussion in which you all are involved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you a little bit what the long table is, and then we'll just start talking. The long table was started by a woman named Lois Weaver, who is a theater director, and she wanted to try and find a way to have civic conversations be a little bit of performative. So everyone at the table tonight, whether they like it or not, is a performer. But really, what we're here to do is have a conversation about zero waste and becoming a zero waste event, how we can better do that, and what our next steps possibly as a festival should be. So I'm James Carter. I'm the Programming and Operations Manager. I'm sitting next to Michael Michelon, who is our Executive Director, and we're very happy to have you all here tonight. And so I'm going to go ahead and read the long table etiquette, and once we've done that, everyone who's at the table can introduce themselves, and then we'll just start our discussion. So the long table etiquette is, this is a performance of a dinner party conversation. I would say that if you would like to get a drink, feel free to get up and get one and bring it back to the table. Anyone seated at the table is a guest performer. Anything is on the menu. Talk is the only course. No hostess will assist you. It is a democracy. To participate, simply take an empty seat at the table. If the table is full, you can request a seat. If you leave the table, you can come back again and again. Feel free to write your comments on the tablecloth. So we have some paper here. Write down your ideas. We'll be taking them with us afterwards to try and regurgitate them in a positive way. There can be silence. There can be awkwardness. There could always be laughter. There is an end, but no conclusion. So our end tonight will end probably around 7 o'clock when the Rackham stage starts blasting music. We're really excited to have everybody here tonight. We hope as the evening grows, or as the evening goes, it will grow, more people will join us. And again, if there's an empty seat, feel free to come up to the table. So now I'm going to just go around the table. I'm going to start with Mike, and we'll go counterclockwise here. Just saying your name, what organization you're with, or if you're just here to participate, then you can just say that too.
Mike Michelon, Executive Director of the Ann Arbor Summer Festival.
I'm Laura Rubin. I'm the Director of the Huron River Watershed Council. We have a lot of staff I'm Laura Rubin. I'm with the Huron River Watershed Council. We have a lot of staff around here, and tonight we're talking a lot about microplastics.
I'm Ed Weissman at Michigan Sustainability Cases, an initiative at University of Michigan working on case-based education for environmental impact.
I'm Adam Simon, a professor of Earth and Environmental Sciences, and I do a lot of research with students focused on reducing the environmental footprint of the University of Michigan's campus.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Weber. I'm with Toyota up on the northeast side of town. I've been there 27 years. My current responsibility, I take care of all of our regulatory matters. So I've got fuel economy, emissions, safety, chemicals, lots of fun stuff. And I'm a materials engineer by training, so happy to be here tonight.
My name is Pravina Ramasamy. I'm also with Toyota Research and Development here in Ann Arbor, where we're headquartered. I'm responsible for community relationships, and I work with the Summer Festival on this wonderful partnership.
Hi, I'm Sally Peckety. I'm from Ann Arbor for forever, so there's that. But I've worked in animal protection for about 30 years. I'm refusing to say yet that I'm retired, but I'm not doing it right now. But this is really important for me.
I'm Danielle. Live in Ann Arbor. I'm actually a veterinarian, and I think medicine's like an area where there's zero sustainability. So just saw this on the event page and was like, check it out. So.
I'm Lauren Hadonen. I've been in Ann Arbor for the past 9 years, and I'm just a sustainably minded, concerned citizen.
My name is Mac. I live in Ann Arbor.
And I'm Mike Garfield. I'm the director of the Ecology Center. Some of you may know we're the organization that started the first recycling program in the state of Michigan back in 1970. And JD told me I didn't have to say this, but I'm not really. I'm kind of awkward about being awkward, and
It can be awkward.
I need to step out at 6:15 because I'm running over to Burns Park to coach my son's baseball. Hey.
We have one more new member.
Hello. I'm Sam Michelon. I'm a co-founder of Live Zero Waste, which is an international nonprofit trying to help people live a zero waste lifestyle. Do the practice activism stuff.
Are you a student who was profiled as having done that for a year?
Yeah.
Okay. I read about you and your sister.
Yeah.
Grew out of a trip in China.
Yeah.
And the decision to go zero waste. And I think I remember there were 2 little stir straws dangling out of your mouth in the photograph.
That's exactly right.
So do you want to start us off and describe what it's like? I've heard of living biblically for a year, but living waste-free for a year?
Yeah. My sister and I started in the middle of 2015, and it hasn't stopped yet. And it's not as hard as it might seem. It's a lot of conversations with wait staff. It's like, hey, can I get a lot of straw? Can I have it for here, and then I'll just grab it. That's like the to-go option. A lot of shopping involved. Giving up, I gave up milk, which is great for the environment in other ways, but I love milk.
So what about milk in particular?
Well, you can't get it without. So our brand of zero waste is upstream focused. Mm-hmm. So it's recycling doesn't really address that issue. So, although it's considerably better than landfills, we're trying to do as much as we can to cut it off at the head. So, you can't get milk without the bottle, and you can return the bottle, but you still have a little plastic thing. Mm-hmm. So, if you're keeping your trash, that ends up being annoying.
So you guys keep all the trash?
Yeah.
I want to know why you did it.
We were writing a paper on environmental policy in China, and it was very heady, and we were we're not doing anything for the environment in day-to-day terms. And Darshan Karwat was a student here a while ago, and he gave a TED talk, and he did it for a year, and we were that's cool. That's real boots on the ground stuff.
So how do you scale up behavior change to the masses?
That's a phenomenal question. We're doing it right now with pledges and trying to offer enough value to them in terms of this is a lifestyle that you can achieve and we can help you get there. And the pledging process is helping sort of prove that there's a community behind it and that some social pressure. But it's a huge challenge, and the main way that we're doing stuff now, or the main marketing, I guess, is through just day-to-day conversations. If you're living zero waste, you have to talk to people about it. You can't avoid it.
So are there non-dairy alternatives?
Not that don't come in. Well, cashew milk
Cashew.
But I don't have the patience to.
There's two women in northern Michigan that have started a straw initiative.
Yeah.
And their theory is that if you just start with something,
Yeah.
it'll get people in the mindset.
Absolutely.
And something as simple as a straw is very visible and very easy to comprehend. And you go into a restaurant and say no straw, or you ask for a paper straw, and then you're starting to drive behavior by the restaurant owners. So then that kind of starts to precipitate other things.
Yeah.
That's what we did this year, is no straw. We did compost straws this year, so.
Yeah.
And the Queen of England has now done that for all of her properties across the empire. After a recent screening of Attenborough's new documentary on plastics, she became so alarmed at how many straws were consumed that she completely eliminated those now from her properties.
Yeah. But I think it's easy for people. People really need something simple and visual. Like you said, your year, you had a monumental task.
Yeah.
But for people to kind of start to get on board with that and normalize that in society, I think it's got to be kind of a step-by-step.
And the zero waste thing, I think, or like the full zero waste lifestyle is mostly geared towards environmentalists who are like, I want to actually, like, I want to really get down to it and walk the walk, which is great, and it's important for people to have that step. But then, like, there's all the peripheral benefits of all your friends who are like, oh shoot, I make so much trash. I should, like, I can't tell you the number of guilty friends that I've got.
So when you say behavioral change, how can, I've been writing notes, but how can we do that at a festival? Because we have 80,000 people who come to this festival from all over Washtenaw County, and you have this audience.
Yeah.
So what you've learned, or what all of your professions are in, whatever discipline it is, or subject matter expert, how do we bring that knowledge to the public, who then will trickle it down to their friends and their friends and their families and whatnot? So this is what the whole initiative that we were looking at is. Not only do we want to reduce the footprint of the festival, but we want to help make it a place to educate and inspire and help our environment by knowledge and experiences and whatnot. So from your experience, does anybody at this table have ideas of how do we start that discussion or that initiative? I mean, this is the start, right? This is the pledging process is one that you talked about, or the social pressure, knowledge, day-to-day conversations. And this is one of our conversations that we're starting.
I have a concern actually, like in regards to that. So festival side, you want to be teaching people this is what we're doing, this is how to do it. However, Ann Arbor does not offer composting to apartment complexes. And I think that's a big issue for our town, our city, because here we are saying, let's go zero waste. Yes, we can start with the festival, but then how do we, so how many college students live in apartment complexes?
Half the people who live in Ann Arbor live in apartments.
So I feel like that's a big area where...
So is there a specific reason why that is? Is it just a volume capacity issue, or?
I'm not sure. I tried contacting the city about it, back and forth, like, they're like, well, this is not available. Why? This is not available. Why? And
Well,
I haven't gotten an answer.
I can explain a little bit about that. There has to be there has to be a system set up. And that's true about anything, with recycling, with waste collection, with you name it. And people on their own can make the difference that you made over the last year, and how you got your friends to do that, and presumably over time, a lot of other people would, and more would do that, and then they'd say, this is really hard because federal law doesn't allow this to happen, or the city doesn't provide this service, or something else is missing in the system. And there are communities that have a bigger system and a better system that's created. It's a little complicated to do organics collection, composting in large apartment buildings, but it's not impossible.
Right.
And there are communities where it's done. There are collection bins on site. Usually, a lot of them they have to be maintained. There has to be a system to get it down. There have to be containers in each apartment unit. There's a whole set of things that need to be done. And back in the day, it's like 25, 30 years ago, it was complicated like that to do recycling in apartment buildings. And Ann Arbor was actually one of the first cities that put a program to collect recyclables for apartment buildings in place, and it still runs in town here. And something like that would work for compost too, but it needs to be invested in by the city or by someone. The whole infrastructure for it needs to get created, and then it's a little easier to do what you're doing, you know. Otherwise, if you live in an apartment building, it would be a lot more challenging.
I think that the important aspect of, like, when you have the big group of people and you control sort of what they see and what they experience, is like being willing to do something really remarkable in like the true sense of the word, like something to remark about. So like finding some way, like even just collecting, like keeping a running tally of all the even recycling, compost, whatever it is. Like if you just pile that up at the entrance of top of the park, off the top of my head, that would be a remarkable thing to do. Like that would start conversations. That would get people thinking like, oh, what? Like this is 80,000 people's evenings up east. Like what is going on? Because that's the like. Once you get those conversations sparked, then you get people calling their cities, and like the good, true activists of us that are willing to put in the work will do the work, but you just got to get that spark.
Well, so sorry to be the corporate guy at the table, but in Ann Arbor, how long was the recycling program subsidized to start it off? Because to me, the big issue here is the upfront investment. One of the things that we've done is we've changed our ROI rules internally so that if it's an environmental initiative, we allow a longer payback. Mm-hmm. And so to me, you know, you mentioned many factors to make a composting program successful, but one of them is, quite frankly, sustainability and profitability. And if the city doesn't see that it's going to be financially doable, or at least a break even, then they probably aren't going to be interested.
Well, that's actually a good story for Ann Arbor, because Ann Arbor's recycling program was started by volunteers without any city investment. Wow. That was made about that was made after 10 years of volunteer and non-profit organized activity that managed to support itself at a small level. It got scaled up by the city's investment, and the city's historically has done really well financially by investing in kind of smart, timely ways in its program. There have been problems in the last few years, but on the whole, it's been really successful financially. To get to the issue you raised about how would you do this kind of festival wide? There's a lot of experience at other events that have gone zero waste all over the country and all over the world, and I think there's a lot of resources that the Summer Festival can draw on to help make this a zero waste event. The recycling part of our organization helps put just that on, and there are a bunch of events in the Ann Arbor area in Washtenaw County now that are going zero waste. The art fair is going to roll out a big new zero waste effort this year. They've been doing small kind of pilots the last few years. So I think these guys are in a great position to make this a really terrific demonstration. And once you see it, once you see like the food containers that are compostable, or they're designed differently so that so that they don't have to be thrown in the trash. And you see a lot of signs up, and usually you need volunteers to help people too to know where to put stuff. When all that's happening, I think that'll lead people to say, oh, we should be able to do this at home, and we should do this at every event.
It's something that we're talking finance. I'm programming in operations, so trying to figure out how to make this a viable thing for us to do. And certainly we have a lot of returnables that we do, and we get some money back from that. But I think that there's a fear, I'm talking about personal fear here, about where this is going to go and how to address the change in overhead and things like that. Does anybody have any sort of thoughts on what can you alleviate my fears?
What is it? What overhead are you talking about?
Well, talking about
incurring the cost.
Yeah.
incurring costs.
of material.
We have a bunch of
Compostable
food
cup
vendors
versus a
out here.
non-compostable cup is going to
The
be much
food
more
vendors and
expensive.
asking all of our food
Yeah.
vendors to go compostable, and is that possible?
So
and what does that look
I can
like?
give you an example. I've worked with students over the last year assessing the history of the zero waste football program, where in 2017 all 6 home games were zero waste. And what that meant is that they diverted about 84% of the waste either to recycling or composting. The only waste that they landfill is waste that's produced in the bathrooms. They incurred a cost over that season of about $160,000.
Wow.
Now the athletic program can absorb that cost. They did a cost-benefit analysis, and ultimately, though, if you translate that into the 675,000 people who attended home football games here on campus, and this is only within the fence, there are only 2 items that cannot be composted. One is the cup that holds the lemon freeze. I don't know the material science behind it. And the other, after trial and error, is the wrapper on the hot dogs, because they went with a compostable wrapper, but it didn't have the plastic sheen that kept the moisture inside the wrapper, so fans complained about that. So they were able to absorb the cost, even though they calculated that it would have at best passed on to individual customers at most 1 or 2 cents per item. But they made the decision that if word got out that customers were paying for the zero waste, and even if it only increased the cost of a hot dog by 2 pennies, there would just be uproar and nobody would want it. So they did that, and one of the concerns the students that I work with had is, well, that's all behind the scenes, it's done for you, but when you go home, you have no idea how it is zero waste. And so you're not able to learn anything that can translate into you as the consumer going to Kroger to make smarter choices about buying compostable products.
And that's why I had mentioned this. I mean, it's great that we can do it at the festival, and this is 3 weeks, but what about the remaining weeks? How can we use this festival to educate our community to do better at home? I mean, I was explaining to one of our guests here that I went to the recycle center in Ann Arbor, the city recycle center, with my daughter's school trip. And that was the first time, and I'm a huge recycler, but that was the moment I realized what is recyclable. Maybe I was much more educated from going from that field trip. That was because I was a volunteer parent going with those kids. And hopefully those kids learn, but why can't that information come here, or be at more public areas to talk to people about how can we make this bigger? And I think from a cost perspective, I wonder if people would be willing to pay that little bit extra for it, or maybe the bottles that we return, that can go to supplement the cost from whatever, or maybe it's another sponsor that covers that, whatever that amount of money is that you'll need.
The difference.
Because I think if it's really important to our community and important to the festival, then maybe it's worth it. And I think if we talk about it more, then people will buy into it and go, I agree with that initiative in that direction, and I want to support it. I mean, we just see with the horror balls from the Huron Watershed Council, the lineup to get it was been huge, and so that is a message to me that people care and they want to do better, and they're willing to pay that $10 for this ball, right?
Well, I'm wondering too, because your event is above and beyond what the city pays. I think the city and the university, sponsor at a pretty low rate, and a lot of it is kind of contributions, right? So I think if you do kind of demonstrate that, like, look, we could get rid of this mound of garbage, right? If you are willing to chip in a little bit, that might be a way to go.
My non-thread but personal experience, I know people are willing to pay. Has anyone in the area here been up to the Little Fleet in Traverse City? The food truck lot? So they've basically gone zero waste. And in talking to the people there who run the place, they basically say, well, we've baked the cost of compostable everything into all of our food prices, all of our drink prices, and the place is still slammed every Friday and Saturday night. So, but I agree with you in terms of, okay, then how do you then make people realize that by going to the Little Fleet and doing what they're supposed to do to sort everything out in their bins, and they have great bins. I took a picture the last time I was there. I'd be happy to share with you, JD, but
yeah, that'd be great.
They have great bins, and how do you then translate that to personal life and what you do at the grocery store, what you do when you're at home? That's a big leap. I agree.
So first of all, I would like to say that I live far from a zero waste life. So every word that I'm going to say is underlined a little bit of hypocrisy, but I'll still say it. sometimes I feel like I don't know what sort of systems are in place to make sure that an idea is a good idea or a bad idea. So, for example, how do we know that this wall, for example, is a good idea? So that's something like a question that I want to ask. Like, you are the in charge, right? Why is this a good idea using this wall?
Well, so with everything, there's sort of the trade-offs. Again, on this idea, the issue of microplastics or plastics in the environment is so large, and people feel pretty immobilized by what they can do about it. It's in our clothes, it's in just about everything we buy. You know, to avoid buying food in plastics is very, very difficult. And so for us, part of what the ball is, it's a representation of trying to give people an idea of something they can do. It lasts a very long time. It's not saying that it's not plastic. It is plastic.
It's still plastic, but that's what
but
I'm saying.
It's catching.
Postponing something is same as cancelling it. So this ball itself will become microplastic, and in the process will release all the microplastics that it caught, right, in the first place, eventually.
But in
No,
this
you
case,
pick the microplastics out and throw them in the trash.
but
Yes, but right
landfilling
now,
them,
landfilling them is much better. I mean, ideally, none of us would use plastic, but that's going to take a very long time to get to, and so this is one step in helping people get to that.
Okay, let's forget about it. I trust you.
You know, and part of the messaging also then is don't buy plastics. You know, if you're buying plastics, look for more durable plastics. Look for, you know, I mean, there's different things in terms of ways to reduce microplastics.
but I think you touch on this issue of human behavior, right? It's like we do our laundry, we get our new microfleece every year, even though we shouldn't have to.
Yes.
We wash it, we don't see the damage that the microplastics do on the other end. And so that to me is possibly the biggest hurdle that we face, is even though you don't see the result, right? You do physically see, I'm going to buy one, and I anticipate with 4 kids I'll have a lot of microplastic coming out of the washing machine. But then you put it in a landfill, so you see the microplastic, but you don't see its benefit for the aquatic ecosystem somewhere on the other end of the wastewater treatment plant.
Well, I want to just take issue with part of that, which is that, you know, I think that I think that we certainly ignore that which we don't see, and our behavior doesn't change when we have nothing to remind us of what it is. But what I think we sometimes focus on too much is our behavior, because our behavior is tied to a larger system, and particularly to the economy right here, and the way our economy in this country, the global economy is structured, we bear the costs and the responsibility of disposing of our waste. And I just do a thought experiment for a second. Why is it? You know, why is it that communities, that local units of government like the city of Ann Arbor, or an institution like the University of Michigan, or a festival like the Ann Arbor Summer Festival, has to be responsible for all this trash, which is mostly, I mean, most of the stuff that gets thrown away at a community level is the packaging that food and consumer products and other stuff comes in. I mean, some of those, you know, some less durable products break down. You gotta throw them out. But I mean, just think for a second, all that packaging and all that plastic, a lot of it didn't exist 80 years ago. I mean, really, you look at the numbers on plastics production, it has it has grown exponentially since World War II. And prior to that, there just wasn't a whole lot of it. There are some products for which it's the manufacturer who's responsible for bearing the costs of disposing or collecting and reprocessing, reusing the stuff. That's true for a lot of more durable equipment, right? It's true in Michigan for deposit containers, you know, on beer cans and pop cans. I mean, it could be structured differently. And my point, I'm not suggesting that all of this is going to get changed overnight. We're not going to change the global economy. And we all relate to these things on a really personal level, of course. But I think that at a systems level, City of Ann Arbor, State of Michigan, University of Michigan, Summer Festival, can make some big changes to the way waste is handled that is a lot friendlier to the environment. All the folks I mentioned, Ann Arbor, State of Michigan, University of Michigan, Summer Festival, could do more, and I think that it can be done. It can be done for the most part and make a significant impact at a reasonable cost.
So how do we then break through the inertia, right? If Ann Arbor is as progressive as they advertise themselves to be, and they love to vilify industry, we have industry here who has effectively gone to zero waste for all of their manufacturing facilities in North America. Yet we have a city council, we have an energy commission largely made up of people who would profess to be ultra-liberal, tree-hugging, granola-eating, want to do for the environment what I can, and they won't do this. So back to the apartment complexes, that's a legislative issue. If the city council said, we want to do this, you mandate that it has to be done. And ultimately the cost is going to be borne by the people who reside in those apartments. But the city won't do it. And I think the challenge there then is, and I see this in self-described conservative Republican students on campus, they see that as the ultimate form of hypocrisy. Where if you look at the University of Michigan, we teach 677 classes, that's an actual fact, that focus on sustainability. And what I hear from our conservative students is hypocrisy reigns supreme. They're told to do something that the city of Ann Arbor and the university won't do. And that's the behavioral challenge that to me is really what holds us back. If the liberals, and I include myself as one, if we aren't willing to galvanize support among ourselves and do it, how do we then get the masses to do it? Right? You talk about recycling, 84% of the residents of the state of Michigan don't even have access to curbside recycling. I learned yesterday, because I took back some iced tea in a can that I bought from Kroger thinking I could recycle it, that non-carbonated aluminum cans are not taxed. And so therefore, the recycling rate, I looked this up today, the recycling rate for non-carbonated beverages sold in aluminum cans is almost zero because you don't get money by taking it back. How do we stimulate Ann Arbor, of all places, to implement change, to demonstrate what's possible?
I think that's... Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I mean, this, for one, I think Ann Arbor could be a really great community to kick off something. I mean, people come many days a week to the Summer Festival, and if we had something like Ann Arbor Summer Festival, water bottles and refill stations, and really jumped the shark by saying that I think even, selling plates and cutlery and having wash stations around and having no, wrapper-y things or anything, I think that could be something that could really take off in a city like Ann Arbor, where we, it became sort of part of what it is you come down to Ann Arbor Summer Festival, you bring your plate and your fork and your spoon and your whatever.
Or maybe you get a discount if you do.
Yeah, you get a discount, and then it'll, if it grows, then the people who don't have their, and are using they feel crappy about it, and they're gonna say, oh my gosh, I'm not in the Cool Club. I went to an event where it was 4 days long, and you couldn't have anything like that there. And if you didn't have a plate or whatever, and people really learned, and I now always keep in my car, I keep all of that kind of stuff. I learned from that one experience, and it really has stuck with me, and now I don't know. It's an upstream thing.
I think that you need doing like a weekly, like you're going to sell aluminum straws one week and people can come and buy them. You can sell the bamboo cutlery sets and they sell those like one week, and you advertise this on social media, you get that word out on social media, and people specifically come to the event to buy these items. And then they take them home to their friends and they're like, look what I got, and those people are motivated to buy those items. And those small changes build people together, and that kind of forces the government to make a change.
Well, I think also, if anything, it starts a conversation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have aluminum straws in my house, and people come over and use them. They're like, this is cool. I don't have plastic in my house, but I like that idea.
Yeah.
Just having,
I pull out my bamboo.
just seeing, like I said, the Cora Ball stuff today, and how people are just saying, yeah, I'm gonna.
So at Toyota, do you have data as to whether or not the practice that you have your employees follow when they're on site, does that translate into changes at home? Do you know anecdotally and/or from surveys?
Any survey on that? It'd be interesting to
find
that
out.
to our environmental groups.
I mean, some of our facilities are so large, it's hard to just get our own data. So we got to start with that first. But yeah, I mean, we encourage our team members, not to bring things to work to throw away, and use reusable mugs and things like that, like this flask. And we've just installed big water dispensers all around the campuses.
And we just made an initiative to remove all paper cups in the company permanently, and we provided every employee with one mug, and then our guests, if they have corporate guests in. But all the cups went away. It's a cost savings, and then also, and we don't have Keurig machines or any of that. That's all been taken away from the organization.
But, no, please.
I think the important thing to stress is that it's conspicuous. Like one of you two was saying that whatever is happening is really loud and proud, and also taking a really critical eye to the things that you're the culture that you're perpetuating as it stands. So selling water bottles, that's it's sort of seen as a default here, but that's a choice to encourage and allow a certain kind of behavior that we're all sitting here because we don't want it. So if it were the case that there just weren't plates here and there weren't water bottles, plastic water bottles being sold, it would be that's a cultural choice that you're making as the festival. We don't use plastic water bottles here. And there are refill stations, and people have to bring their own plates, and you can market it and not be preachy about it, but it's just how it is here. And that's a cultural choice that you're making that fights against the thing that we're all trying to fight against. Whereas right now, the cultural choice being made is we do sell water bottles. We do use plates that we throw away that we use for clothes. These are all things that if you see them as active choices to sell water bottles and to do all this stuff, then you can start to analyze them a little differently.
It's both cultural and it's structural, and they reinforce each other. And so the thing about what you guys have done at Toyota is that you've created systems to actually manage the flow of materials through your facilities and your offices and so people can plug into that system and they learn, and I'm sure you reinforce it with good education and culture. And I've been in this, I've been working in this field for a long time, and this company Toyota has been a leader in this particular space about reducing waste and adopting a zero waste goal at a very early point. And they're not the only large corporation that has done that. There are other companies that have created zero waste goals and made a significant amount of progress to them. Microsoft has, Google has. Actually, Walmart has made a significant investment in this too, and a lot of companies you wouldn't expect. At some level, it may be easier for a company to do it than a community, but communities have made these commitments too, and there have been zero waste commitments made by a lot of cities around the United States, Canada, and across the world, and some states have as well. There are communities in the United States that have recycling and recovery rates over 70%. San Francisco is around 80% at this point, and there are a lot of really good systems set up in those communities. And historically, Ann Arbor's had one of those really good systems, but I'm afraid to say we've fallen down in the last few years, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. But people know what it is. It's got to do with organics. It's got to do with collecting compostables, businesses, and multifamily complexes, recyclables there, and a number of other things. It can be done without. It can be done affordably. I think generally when a good system is put in place, people want to participate in it. But I think you need both to make it really work. And with that, I gotta make my exit.
Thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure. Likewise.
So if I may say something, so I think it is worth thinking about what will make things inconvenient, because that's where something we can do something. Like you said, here, for example, there will be plastic water bottles sold because we want to look after the convenience of people who are attending the festival. So as soon as we see what will make things a little bit inconvenient for people, that's where we might see some opportunity. So if we say no plastic bottles for one day, if we do that for one day, no plastic bottles will be sold. People will be unhappy, people will complain, people will say, oh, I have to bring my bottle. But that's exactly, I think, where the content is. Whatever, because, I mean, we all agree that it's kind of a mess right now, right? And it will have to be a little bit of inconvenience involved in order to rectify it. Will not necessarily, everything cannot be rectified just through convenience. It has to be, someone has to bear a little bit of inconvenience somewhere. So I think Ann Arbor Summer Festival can do.
So
Right,
to your point, you know,
you can sell no plastic bottles for one
yeah,
day.
so I think to your point, and oh, she's gone now, but to the young lady who's here, we talking about that inconvenience and then offering, if you just did that one day without a water bottle, use that opportunity to educate people to say, why are we doing this, right? I had to buy a water bottle to do it, you communicate it, but then you say, well, this is how many water bottles we collected yesterday with your display, and now we don't want to have that impact. Or we sell those straws and it's supporting or like the Ecology Center and whatnot. Educating people about what straws do and why we stopped it. Or if you're at that event explaining by having straws and when it goes into our water streams and what is it you use it for 1 minute or 2 minutes and what is the long-term impact. I think using it as a moment to leverage a conversation with people who would have never had exposure to that. I think that's a change moment. You may not have someone go to zero waste like you did and travel to China, which is amazing. But if you made a small change, I think that's significant. This is starting a conversation.
I would also add on to that I think in behavior change, it's very important to make the person feel confident at what they do, at the behavior change. And I think it's one of the reasons that we've seen at the zero waste events, the importance of having volunteers or people standing at the waste receptacles telling people what to do, because I think if you want them to take it home or if you want them to adopt it, you have to make them feel that they're doing the right way. You have to make them feel confident at it, and that it's something that by having it at Toyota at work every day, they start to feel like, oh, I can do this, I know I'm doing it the right way, or having a friend who says, oh, I can take this one step, because people are going to pick and choose what they want to adopt, but they have to feel like they're doing it right to be able to transfer that behavior.
And importantly, you don't want to make people feel that you are belittling them for not going 100% of the way to zero waste.
Right. Whatever they do choose to engage in.
Well, and that's where, at least in our experience, the step-by-step approach has always been more successful for us than the pull Band-Aid approach. Because people can then start to become familiar with it, comfortable with it. So whether it's one night in the summer festival or doing these 3 things this year, these 6 things next year, these 9 things the year after, taking that step-by-step approach in our experience has always been the more successful final result.
I wanted to say really quickly, we're about halfway through at this point, and if you came a little bit late, this is a long table discussion. We're talking about zero waste event here at the Ann Arbor Summer Festival. We're trying to do it over the next 3 to 5 years. There's a lot of experts at the table. There's a lot of people who are just here to talk. If you're interested in talking, come and join us at the table. There's empty seats, and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
I was also going to ask, is there any potential benefit to tying this into humans' natural desire to be competitive? Right. So thinking about, for example, if you look at the use of antibacterial soap in hospitals, among the most successful ways that hospitals encourage nurses and doctors to start actually using it every time they left the patient's room was to make it a competition between different shifts of nurses among different units. And ultimately, the way that they got it to work was they convinced nurses that they could do it better than doctors, because doctors were the ones who did it the least. But here are people that are trained to understand the benefit of scrubbing down every time, but weren't doing it just because they had convinced themselves that it took too much time. So there is something about a competitive streak, right? Like, our summer festival is better than somebody else's summer festival.
I keep it though within this community.
Yeah.
The other thing we find is that if you also put out there that this community that comes to Summerfest cares about this issue, you're also going to say, oh, I'm part of that community, I want to do my part. So if it could be our summer festival against another summer festival rather than certain Summerfest goers versus others.
It could be comparison between this year versus our own previous year.
Or today versus yesterday.
And competition works definitely already in our community. I went to Green Hills, a school in the area, and I was the head of the Green Initiatives group there for 3 years. And one of the big things that we did was create a recycling competition between the grades in a week, and having just a little bit of incentive, okay, I'm going to beat this other grade, it actually increased the recycling rate for the whole school for the rest of the years that I was there, and it was really a beneficial event. So I think, again, other people had these ideas, having competition over the course of a few days, 1 week of the Summerfest, it could have a lasting impact.
So you have something like all the attendees on a Tuesday night win a free Toyota.
Sure, maybe a scale model. I want a scale model. We can do a scale model. That'd be okay.
That would be contrary to our goals, right?
I was just going to add, on an institutional level, it's the same thing, because the university would not have sustainability goals were it not for other universities that adopted them first.
Yeah.
For example, OSU was actually the first big stadium in the country to do a zero-waste football game.
Yep.
And that was what really drove the University of Michigan to also have a zero-waste football game. So I don't think they would have done it had OSU not done it first. So I think it also applies on an institutional level as well to like be the best school in the Big Ten and yeah, have the smallest waste stream from your football games.
So does Columbus have a summer festival?
What I heard earlier was that the art fair is having a huge initiative this year. And I'm involved with the festival quite heavily. And what I'm looking at is, the competitive thing, the art fair against the summer festival, maybe not. But one of the things that I've been listening to for quite a while, you're talking about the vendors, this and that, but it's the external border that the big house has.
Yep.
They control 100%.
Yep.
Here, that is not the case in any way, shape, or form. And the educational aspect, to me, the volunteers, the bins that have labeling ad nauseum. You go in every building around here the university owns, or has, there are different labelings on different containers. That's where I feel that the research heading towards the educational aspects, I watch, and generational. I watched my in-laws move to Florida and were mandated to recycle. Before they left for Florida, they threw everything in the landfill, period.
Yeah.
And I used to complain to them, because I've been involved in numerous ways with recycling in this community since I was a teenager. To find out that they changed their MO to now have 4 bins in a garage. I did a happy dance. But it's the educational aspect, not the mandate.
Right, right.
But the educational, because I've been involved here for 12 years already, trying to help with this whole thing. And I'm in the nuts and bolts.
Let me just say that Pete's in charge of all of our waste management here, so it's not just involved with it. He has some skin in the game. So.
And I have historical, anecdotal information that you'd go, really? But moving on from there, to me, the educational aspect is the primary way to head towards that, which I applaud you for on a daily, hourly, every minute of your life doing. And to be able to do that here in some fashion, I think is the only way it's going to grow, from my perspective, what little that is. So,
I have a question, which is it worthwhile to target 100% zero waste?
Yes.
I'm wondering first, is the definition of zero waste on a corporate level? Because I learned, Adam produced a case for us at learngala.com, just to plug, that he's mentioned several times about the Michigan Stadium. I think they're targeting 86%. I think at the university, 90% is still called zero waste.
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
that's correct. That's my understanding. I'm doing a lot of research on this.
Yeah.
And is there any, you're from the university?
I work there, yeah.
Okay. I have to mention this to everybody here. I don't know if you mentioned this, JD.
Go ahead.
The university no longer takes glass for recycling.
Correct.
That happened last year.
Yeah.
2 years
I went,
ago.
well, they allowed us to put all the glass in the recycling here 2 years ago. Last year they did not, during the festival. And I went, what? Because Ann Arbor Recycling, as you know it, was started by two people that were doing glass recycling at the First Methodist Church youth group in the early 70s because they wanted an answer to the Boy Scout group doing a paper drive. And they started Ann Arbor Recycle. And now the university doesn't take glass. It was just like...
Does Recycle Ann Arbor take glass?
I haul every bit of our glass there personally every week for 3.5 weeks. Yes, they do. And I do drive a pickup truck, and it's messy, but the point is that to find out that because it's not profitable is my assumption for the university to recycle glass.
Well, I think that the contract that the university had, the contractors stopped recycling because they were no longer profitable.
Exactly.
But I think it indicates a lack of progressive thought by the people at the university. To my knowledge, no one at the university has reached out to surrounding entities, such as the city of Ann Arbor, to figure out ways to partner with the city to have multiple sources of glass that are all aggregated and then recycled.
Even Western Washington Academy, that group definitely takes both colored and clear glass. Actually, very profitable.
And they were sorting glitter and colored glass in the basement of First Methodist Church in 1972-3 for recycling purposes, and those are some of those people are the ones that created what we know as Ann Arbor Recycle. Do you run into stone walls like that at all when you're trying?
We cut out recycling as well, so it's.
So I have a question. So as for your role, how do you think that this is working, or what can we do better? Are people understanding that what goes compost, what goes recycling, what goes trash?
Because we're taking baby steps. This year we started a compost bin. Last year we started it, but this year we're labeling it more so. And it's strictly for our compostable beer cups, not for Food Row.
Yeah.
Food Row becomes a whole different entity because you have foodstuffs, quote, paper products that are potentially compostable, especially if you get all the vendors to only use compostable products. But the issue becomes the educational aspect of what goes where, how many bins do you have, and then after the fact, sending it through the correct stream and knowing that it's being handled correctly. Because I know in the public schools here, which I'm involved in also, the students are watching the custodial staff put all the paper for recycling in the trash, and they raise holy heck. And I applaud them, but if you can't monitor to some extent after the fact, what I'm getting at, it's purely, from my perspective, educational. What goes where, and how is it going to be handled after the fact?
So we were here the other night, and my wife had a wine, and my friend had a beer. So, and your wine glasses aren't compostable yet, so we had to work through that. We had a whole conversation around that, so they had to.
And I can tell you even the history about that. A compostable wine cup is soft plastic. A non-compostable is the hard plastic. But if you pick up one of these nice little glasses of wine and it's soft and you're not aware of that, all of a sudden you're wearing the red wine.
And then to answer your question, real
what, you want to have them wear them?
I mean, maybe we need to have wine glasses for sale.
That's there has been research done here on what's the best glass to serve the patron.
Yeah.
From a a consumer, perspective. But compostable wine cups, they're completely available online or everywhere. I know that for a fact. But from the standpoint, your wife's conundrum, where does my stuff go? And that's the educational stuff. I walk into MLB and I see 2 bins with great signage above it. And honestly, I think we need 5 bins with signage and a person sitting there at these stations, and maybe have less stations so they have to hunt them out for overhead. Sure. But that's just my perspective.
No, I was just going to say the definition, back to your question, as made by the Zero Waste Business Council, U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, Basically, a zero waste business or event is one with 90% or greater diversion of all waste from landfill, from incineration, and from the environment, with the ultimate goal of 100% diversion. So it actually does allow 10% of something else for a business.
So that's 10% of the total things that are
of your incoming consumption.
Yeah, okay.
One of the nice things I noticed when we started this conversation is immediately people were going beyond zero waste for an event. They weren't just saying, what are we going to do with all this waste? They were saying, how can we go out to the community and go beyond this? And what I heard from you was, make it remarkable, make it, and then I heard other people talk about educational. When we educate, so we're not just behind the scenes trying to do something super efficient and no waste. We want to show them what we're doing so that it'll go beyond just this zero waste event. Competition sounds like a great idea. I'd like to talk maybe about partnerships. If we're going to do this, we're going to educate people. Or is the school event going to get involved? Is another artist going to build sculptures with the waste from last year? Like, what are some of the things that can make this remarkable? Because, I mean, from the get-go, people are saying, like, this is going to happen. It's going to be a zero waste event, but can we make it more?
Yeah. Okay, I talk to that a little bit because we're trying to do a little bit of baby steps around that a little bit this year. So part of this, we've started talking to our Gala, which is, I sent some energy to you. And are you okay?
It's like compostable chairs.
That's the wine one. The wine ones are soft.
I usually do that. It's 11 years old. The festival could eat. Never mind.
Dramatic long table discussion. So that's part of what these partnerships. So when we started talking to Toyota about how we were going to sort of kick this off and approaching partners to work with them, we decided that we wanted to talk to the Huron River Watershed Council, the Ecology Center, mainly because they're trying to reduce waste in the environment, and the Ecology Center is a very big part of Recycle Ann Arbor. And so that we knew that those two partners, this is what we're doing it for.
That's right.
I believe in children. They're our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way, right? So this is my daughter, Serena. So we're just really excited about the idea of having these partnerships because to us, this is the beginning of it. So yay, we were able to help support the Huron River Watershed Council that has some core balls, and their aim is to try and reduce plastics in the river by 10% over the next several years. And so that's an initiative that sort of goes out from our festival. We're not trying to just, like, this footprint. Yeah, the way I see it is it's not just the festival footprint, what our festival footprint is, but our footprint extends beyond here. It's the Huron River. It's Recycle Ann Arbor. It's lots of different sort of aspects to sort of having an impact on our community. And ready? Got it? You want to sit there?
Well, could you think about having a sponsored competition next year where you put out, so to go to all the local schools and have students come up with 3D visualizations of all the waste? And I can give you an example. Last year, the University of Michigan's Energy Institute did that. They issued a challenge for students across campus to create, in any way that they wanted, a visualization of the CO2 emissions for the university. And I was a judge on that, and some of them were absolutely amazing. One of the best ones was they created a 3D scaled-down model of the big house, and then they used water to fill it with CO2, to fill it, and showed how quickly we fill that volume with CO2. So something like that next year, which could be out here on the grounds, where you could, over the next year, perhaps you would find a willing sponsor to have some small prize to get students, because I really think, going to her age, but going to your generation's age, where you do educate and make them aware in a cool way. Like you allow them to participate in visualizing what that waste stream is. You could reach out to the AP Environmental Science classes in the high schools throughout Ann Arbor. It would be hard to imagine that students would not love to get involved in doing something like that. Right? It starts the discussion, absolutely.
And it's also visual, right? If that image of the big house, whoever's seen that, then that's an image imprinted in their mind to go, every time they do something, they'll go, oh, that image is now in their head.
Right.
So it's, again, changed.
And it's not a good versus bad, it's just this is the amount of waste, and then you just plant the seed to start the conversation, and maybe when somebody's at home, you know, they would modify their behavior. Could you have aluminum straws? Is there a vendor who would have a little table of aluminum straws or compostable wine cups?
Yeah, so I'm going to be chair of the board of the festival next year. So I'm very interested in how to do this. But in particularly, I mean, I think partnerships are going to be critical. But partnerships require curation. You know, and you have a very small staff for this festival. So one of the challenges is going to be selecting several key partnerships. And I've worked at the university for 1 million years. So I mean, I think there are several very effective places where we might engage some student groups that can help us manage some additional partnerships. When we start talking about secondary schools or other programs, we're going to need some help figuring out how to manage the networks that could be involved. I think they're here. I mean, I think there are tremendous ideas, both for systematically looking at the research that's already been done on what has worked in events, but then, as our colleague who manages the waste was talking about, we have a lot of work over time with vendors in terms of how do we actually implement some of these changes.
Like how could you implement this?
Right, there are all of these,
the food trucks in
potential changes.
Bottom line is, if you're a food truck parking on this lot, you're told to have compostable silverware, compostable trays, compostable plates. That's it. You have no choice. Now, whether you bake that into your food prices or not, that's up to you and your business model. But that's the rules of the game, basically.
But I think one of the challenges, as I listen to all of the aspects, is to integrate that into this poor man's budget and over what period of time, because all of these changes have implications for the audience, the vendors, the community groups that have to manage the waste. So it's like, I think we should make sure we remember we didn't plan to do this in 1 year, but I think we may need some help with, in fact, one of the interesting projects is to say, what is a systemic way to take a community function and change it around this issue? Because I think that is often why it doesn't work. I mean, that's my concern, is that it often doesn't work because it's not the lack of ideas, but the implementation of those ideas on a already fragile financial structure is a problem.
Could I just throw? Yeah. No, please. I just want to throw like one idea in the pool. I was thinking that one way that it's hard for behavior change is that one, that there's no signs. Second, that it's just unrealistic to have people there all the time instructing people on how to do and how to do the waste management and separation. Perhaps like having immediate feedback and Q&A is helpful in a couple of ways. Could be like having a website that people, if they have questions on where should they put their trash, they can check their website, or having a phone number that it's just a central number that dials to whoever partner slide is available. I can just call and say, hey, can I throw my pizza box in there? It can say that if you have food in there, clear that out, or how clean you need to have your containers in order to put them in. Like those questions, if they get immediate answers, that could be really helpful.
We need an app.
Yep. Maybe Google can do that for us, right? They can advance this.
So talking about education for the summer festival, I truly think that the time of advertising for recycle was 10-20 years ago. I think right now we should be advertising reducing recycling. Based on my understanding, a lot of polyethylene terephthalate, like a PET, whenever a bottle is recycled is a really bad word actually. It makes people think that it's a good thing, but it's not really a good thing. If you recycle like 100 bottles, you need to add 50 bottles worth of new plastic in order to get new 100 bottles. materials. So it's not really a good thing, to be honest. I think the time of recycling advertising was 20 years ago. I think right now the time to advertise is reduced, not recycling.
Well, I think that's very material dependent, right?
Well,
so
okay, then let's say
definitely other materials that.
Yes, but I'm saying plastic. Plastic, glass has very good. Metal, glass, very good. Plastic, not good.
So you're saying that the messaging was our initiative is to reduce our impact, or reducing our consumption of whatever materials. But of course, I think having recycling so we know that it's not just going to go into a landfill, I think it's a little bit of both. Because if we say no recycling, that means...
Yeah, but there is something of a cobra effect with it. Because whenever people think there is a recycling, people think that, I shouldn't say people, let's say I think that, let's say, if there is recycling available, I will say, okay, whatever I'm using is recyclable. And the recycling is available, guilt-free, no problem. But that's not quite true. That's not... If it's plastic, the recycling plastic is not. If we attach good kind of a adjective to it, then it's kind of a cobra effect. You know what cobra effect is? So I think we should address reduce.
I'm curious back to the education and competition. So what's been the long-term success of Green Hills? Have you followed it?
I've been out of there for 5 years. So
Okay.
I know that the Green Initiative group no longer exists after I left. So.
There was one side.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the point about recycling or composting things, I think you're right. We're really past that. We really need to get into reducing all of those packaging things. And I think it would be great if at the festival, most of the trash is coming from food, right? It's mostly food and beverage where we're getting most of the packaging. So most street food is already packaged with the food. That's the whole definition of street food. So if we required every vendor to have one item on their menu that was just held in the hand, and that was the green item, and that had to be at the top of their menu, the first item on their menu. Here's the Ann Arbor Summer Festival green offering. It's a hot dog just by itself, or maybe just with a napkin, or it's a spinach pie that is that has no wrapping, because all this compostable silverware and compostable plates, there's a lot of energy behind that, creating them and then also composting them. And we want to teach people that their decisions, day in and day out, their best decision is to buy a green cabbage that has no packaging, or buy broccoli that has no packaging, rather than buy the one in plastic, or buy cauliflower that is always wrapped in plastic. You can make that choice every single day by buying stuff that is not in packaging. You can buy individual apples, individual potatoes. You don't have to buy the plastic bag. There are ways to get around a lot of this packaging, and if we let people have that experience, so they can eat something that is just held in their hand, they don't need all this extra stuff. People think they need a lot of, that's been in our culture, that we have to have a plate and 6 napkins and,
And I would say that if that initiative was put in with those vendors, we would need to talk about that. Or there has to be signage, because I think we do a lot of these things. It's great, and it's great for the environment. And there's no connection. There's no connection to send that messaging. You've lost an opportunity, right? We're giving you this hot dog.
If you made the green item, then you have a message saying we have
this
green
hot dog,
food. Yeah.
like you would at a barbecue. Here's your hot dog, and you don't have packaging because this is the
Because
and
we
you don't have a straw because
right.
this is the effect.
Right, no aluminum straws. You just don't need a straw. Why do you have to have a straw?
The one point we were talking about earlier was about not belittling people,
right.
And that's one of the great blessings of doing it personally is getting a lot of data on how to not mess up the interaction. And the best way by far for me has been self-deprecation. I mean, listen, this is my thing, and taking responsibility for it, and not seeming like you're doing something wrong. This is on you. I'm the good one, and you're, that kind of attitude is plagued environmentalism forever. So figuring out a way to, as an institution, be like, we messed up. Like, we've been creating trash for a long time. That's our bad. Like, we're trying to do, like, having a messaging that isn't, and this is someone with maybe a marketing person, I don't know, but like, exactly, not having it be having education come in the form of like aspirational, non-judgmental, like not making it a bad thing that people are doing, making it like a thing that the festival has to do to live up to its values and communicate those values in a good way. There's a professional frat at U of M that would be super downtown with that. There's a professional fraternity at U of M that would be super downtown with that recruiting.
Yeah, because the potential downside for zero waste is that it becomes as divided as climate change, where people were made to feel bad for their contributions to greenhouse gases. And so I think coming up with a marketing strategy where it's not about good versus bad, it's this is what we can all do, and you don't have to feel bad because you're not going as far as you were going.
And we're taking responsibility, like right. This is us, this is what taking responsibility looks like, modeling what I think my values dictate.
Yeah.
And our values dictate us to have this meeting and figure this stuff out, whatever next steps we do. And like having that attitude be pervasive rather than trying to, like, we need to teach people how to, no, it's us.
Well, because ultimately the cost for all of this is baked into what we pay as a consumer, right? I mean, so if it increases the cost of, you know, whatever the food is down at the food truck by a nickel because you require them to have compostable plates, well, we're still paying that nickel in some way because you're baking in the cost for transporting all the trash off-site, right? So it's reshuffling the cost around, but making consumers aware of it.
I also think you have an opportunity because this is an event that people either buy a ticket for in advance or they look usually at a program to see what's coming out. And so right then and there you have an opportunity to say, if you bring a water bottle, you get free water, or $1 off. Or if you bring silverware or a plate, or tonight is bring your own silverware, you know, I mean, something like that. You do have an opportunity where most people are looking at something in advance and come in or having a ticket. So you have an opportunity to educate there and actually, again, avoid all the compostable silverware and ever. Encourage people to
I would like people can wander. People can wander. People can look at this as like a kind of a nice challenge, and they can wander. They can talk about it.
Yep. Yep. You show up and everybody brings their plate that night.
I like the idea of making it okay to eat with your hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a place you can eat with your hands.
The Blue Nile could sponsor the food.
Blue Nile.
Well, but what you're talking about, I mean, if you look at all the coffee places, they do this, right? Starbucks, Espresso Royale, I take my own cup in and I get 10 cents off.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is a way to incentivize people to do it.
Yep.
And eventually it just becomes second nature. You always have that coffee cup that you haven't washed in years, but you take it with you to save your time. It's true. But that's reducing the waste, right? Because then you're washing less frequently.
And it makes it not weird, because I was in DC when they passed a bag tax of like a nickel a bag. And plastic bags. It was controversial for a couple reasons. But before that, I bring my own bags, and they were always like, I don't want to mess with that. But afterwards, they're like, oh yeah, like you want to save 15 cents. Like, I'm going to help you do that. You know what I mean?
And I wanted to mindset, right?
Yeah.
That's how you spin it.
It wasn't about the money, it was, you know, sort of.
I wanted to say something sort of back to what you were talking about involving people in the conversation. Sort of the self-deprecation, trying to like say, okay, well, this is what we want to do. That's why we're talking like this tonight, as opposed to having a few of our partners sitting up there and listening and having Q&A and having a moderator, because we wanted to have a dialogue with people. And you know, we're happy that everyone joined, you know, is like hanging out along the sides and is just listening. But then a lot of you have decided to jump in, and I think that's really why we're doing this. Is we want people to. We want our community to be a part of this decision. We want a part of this process as we make it, because, you know, we can do all the studies, we can do all the, you know, but in the end, if the community doesn't feel like they're a part of it, they're not going to be on board with it. At least that's how we're seeing it at this point. And it's nice to hear that there's some validation of those points of view.
I think, so I actually am from Washington, D.C., just a tourist. We come here because this event is a great event. decided to spend a week here and enjoy this. And just Ann Arbor in general. My wife went to school here. She can never leave it. So anyway, when I walked up and I saw that was a goal, I was kind of surprised that wasn't already happening. This is a progressive place. It's not going to be surprising that you get it done. I'm not surprised the big house has already come so far. I think it's really just, bringing the community in so you can go beyond this. But I think, if you just said next year, it'd be a lot of work and probably some money to go zero next year. I don't think you get a lot of pushback when people say, whoa, we want to waste. This is Ann Arbor, and the type of people go this is probably on board. But to really bring everyone in and say, like, hey, this is a shift in how we think, and we want you to think this way, and go back out. I think that's the real challenge. And I love some of the ideas of like, let's reduce even before we start reducing our waste. Like, I didn't even think about it, but zero waste is one goal. But you could have a bigger goal, just no waste, before we get to the thing. So very exciting.
That's really wonderful that you come back. So thanks for being here and being a part of the conversation.
You married into the cult.
Yeah,
I got it. Please check my closet. Every in-law all went to Michigan and they've all sent me their stuff. I've got go for the stuff.
If it's helpful at all in terms of definitions of stuff, the personal, like the community definition that the zero waste is taking is like, don't buy any new stuff. Like that's cutting it off. Whereas like figure out what to do with the stuff after you bought it, that's another way to do zero waste. But like the issue in my mind is that every time you buy something new, regardless of whether it's compostable or whatever, it's been produced. Like the target is the production and the upstream thing. Like you don't want all the stuff that had to happen to get it there to happen. That's what you're upset about. And then the downstream stuff is that as well. And usually the cost is like probably not all the costs is borne by the consumer. It's probably borne by people in the Philippines that are paying it not with dollars but with lifestyle. Like they're island treatment.
But you have to be careful when you market that concept. I remember a few years ago, Patagonia leading up to a Black Friday, they marketed it. I think the slogan was something along the lines of, "You don't need it." And what they did is they said, check your closet to see what jacket you already have. And their goal was to reduce the consumption of jackets that year. But they found that there was something like a 35% increase in the number of fleece jackets with microplastics that were sold. Because then, post-mortem, people looked at the jackets and thought, oh my gosh, that looks old to me now. I'm going to go buy something new. So you have to be creative with the market. Otherwise, people will do the opposite of your intent.
Well, I have to say, I think that it would be interesting to see when we make this change completely, how it'll affect upstream. I mean, we certainly have a lot of vendors that are going to either push back or not be able to be a part of the festival anymore, and what that looks like. And as I say this, and this is going out loud, I'm sure that we'll see how they react to these things. But it might cause them to change how they do business. And I think that that's the whole point, right? This isn't just hey, we're going to do this because it's good for the environment or good for, this is really about tendrils going out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about food packaging tonight. We worry about perks packaging.
Yeah.
How do we get an engine from year to year?
Yeah.
And so we've had to push way upstream to basically encourage our entire supply chain to be thinking in this way. So you're going to have to do the same thing, right? How did all those bottles of Coke get here tonight? Right, exactly. So the distributor's going to worry about that, and you want the distributor to worry about
Of course.
So you're really going to have to think in both directions.
Yeah.
So it's a big challenge.
Did anybody ask yet why Summerfest hasn't required the vendors to be compostable and zero waste?
Why we haven't required them to be zero waste yet? Because honestly, this is something that, so last year we went to the compostable beer cups. It was sort of a step. And this is sort of our second step, is really organizing and assessing things. And I think you're going to see a big change next year. So I can't speak to why it hasn't happened before, but we have acknowledged that it needs to happen, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I know you'd mentioned that at 7 we will likely be drowned out by music on the stage. Does anybody have any last thoughts they want to share?
I just would like to put in a Club to make it so that no vendors or anybody hosting events or anything offers balloons that are released up into the environment. Because I come down here and like, you know, people are like, oh, they're not going to be like, oh, we just give them to the children, and like, all night long, you see them going up. And I mean, there was just that recent thing where there was some released from Arkansas, and they ended up in France, and some dog's collar, and I pick them up on the beach, in the ocean, all the time. And there's no need for balloons to be here. There's so many progressive cities that don't even allow them in the cities at all. And I can't believe that at an event like this, we still let that happen. It just sends, like, I think, the wrong message. And I know it's such a downer to say I'm the one that hates balloons, but I mean, they really do so much damage to the environment. It's just, I mean, it's just a direct thing where a bird gets, you know, a piece of string caught on their leg or in their beak or in their nest or turtles. I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen all the crazy turtle stuff going on. Like, please, if you can make it
So today's Kids Zone activity has balloons at it.
Yeah. So there's balloons. There's always. So that's, I literally have not been down yet this year because it's upsetting to me to see all the balloons, and it's more of a negative experience to me this time because then I do go out and I help the animals that have been hurt by the balloons. So.
And I have one last thought. You know, as we hear that the art fair is thinking about going zero waste in this event, and you know, the big house has. The other thing that makes me think about it is, you know, a lot of it is creating the demand for this alternative. You know, how does Coke get here, and you know, things like that. Asking the restaurants to do this. If there was a larger event where next year Summerfest and the art fair and Huron River Day, or you know, if there were 5 events that all said we're all going to do this together, then it also creates, you know, the restaurants have a greater incentive to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to have a lot of demand at all these festivals for all this, rather than just one event, and then at my other events I can keep doing it this other way. So I know it you know, again, it's the partnership idea.
Strength in numbers.
But you know, it tends to be like, if you guys are doing this, can we get some of the other events going on to do the same thing to help build it?
And there are some restaurants I know that will cater zero waste events on campus. So they have put together menus now that allow you to have the food brought to campus for zero waste events.
Right down Argus markets.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And in general, if you look at all the advertising of Ann Arbor Summer Festival, or the websites or the pamphlets, it can have some kind of a theme that makes it look like environmentally friendly or something. That would be also good.
I would just like to say, I think, like with the balloons and what this man said about Ann Arbor, we should be leaders. We should just be bold and be courageous and just do it. This is the place to do it. And go further. You know, like, you know, just say recycling is not where we're at. That's not our goal. Our goal is to really reduce the total usage. And just be the leading edges. It seems like we're trained. Everybody's a little shy. You know, what will the vendors say? You know, what are people going to say? You know, just go for it.
I could see in a couple of years other events coming to you guys for consulting. Like, how do we do this? How did you do this? You have the blueprint.
Yeah. And we've certainly talked about that with our partners over here, about, you know, what that might look like in a few years and how we can, you know, be a model. I know we've also talked to Gala and Adam about seeing the case study around the big house and what that looks like. Adam's also worked on some e-waste case studies too, so we're hoping to learn from a lot of those types of things and then spread the love.
Is there any way this conversation can continue online?
Sure. So one thing that's happening right now is that we're streaming it on Facebook Live. So hopefully people are interacting there. We're looking at ways of sort of expanding the conversation. We have a page that's dedicated to our festival footprint, and our aim is to take a lot of the things that have been digested from here, It's also, we're recording in HD, so we'll put that archive on YouTube and things like that. But we're open to any sort of ideas, so if you have thoughts about what that might be, I'd love to hear it.
I think one final word of caution from me, when you look at the University of Michigan's Office of Campus Sustainability, which pledged in 2011 to reduce or divert from landfills 40% of their waste, and as of today has diverted 0% relative to 2006 baseline year, is don't create a goal without doing due diligence first to figure out what goal you can put in place for next year that you can achieve.
Yeah.
And that's not gaming the system, but it's more, you don't want to create this goal of zero waste in 2019 and then you don't hit it and you suffer a backlash of criticism. But come up with some, so last year was the compostable beer cups. You know, come up, and it's not take baby steps so that 50 years from now you're but create goals and then put in place benchmarks and accountability so that you actually achieve the goal of zero waste in 5 years, where every year you have a plan that is strategic to get you to that goal. Otherwise, what you end up with is a lot of people looking at you and you have a mess. Exactly.
I think go for it, just go for it. No baby steps. No gradual. We don't have time for that.
But having raised 4 kids, they come out little blobs, and you take a lot of baby steps to get them out of the house. Right?
Zero waste is a misnomer anyway, so we should not
criticism like, oh, we should do this.
Yeah.
This is awesome. This is amazing.
Oh, good. Well,
I think
the last thing on the list here is that there is an end but no conclusion. Obviously, this is going to continue happening. My email, if anybody's interested, is carter@a2sf.org. If you have other ideas that you'd like to share with us, please feel free to email me. Thank you all for being here this evening. Our partners, our friends and community, thank you very much. And anyone online, thanks a lot for being there as well. So have a great night and go enjoy the show.
Thank you. Thank you.